Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session with your host,
Michael Rearden.
So, talking about your work today, sexual empowerment coach. You work helping people with somatic sex education, relationship counselor, and just helping people overall with transforming their relationship, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So let's get straight into it. Tell me a little bit about your work.
Beautiful. I first began 23 years ago when I came out of my marriage and with my divorce, and I realized that I had no skills. So my conventional sex education had not equipped me with creating a healthy relationship or a sustainable sexual connection with someone. So it was like, okay, this is pretty important to my life, the quality of my life. So where are my gaps and what do I need to learn? So this took me on an amazing journey. And 23 years ago, the sexuality movement was in its very early stages. There was a couple of things in Australia. And as I booked in and I started to do the embodiment practices, I started to notice a congruency between my head and my heart and my emotions and my genitals, and came alive. And it was like, wow, this is it. This is something that really speaks to me. So 15 years ago, I started my practice working with men and women and couples. And it has been the most extraordinary journey of unlearning and relearning so that I could really answer those questions around how do I create a healthy relationship with somebody and how do I create a sustainable sexual connection with someone.
What would you say is the number one, if you had to pick a number one, issue with relationships today? And then once we get past relationships, marriage.
Two parts. First, we've got to have the communication. Yeah, the conscious sex conversations that we need to be having to really start to show up authentically, to be able to really speak our truth, to be able to speak our needs and what we really want and what our limits are and what our agreements are that we're consenting to with each other. We've got to get the communication pieces down. And of course, we're going to meet places in ourselves where we're holding shame around being authentic with who we are as a sexual being. And then the second place is our embodiment, to actually be here in our bodies, to be able to objectively notice what's occurring, to be able to notice our energy, our words, our actions, to objectively notice what's happening and self-reflect so that we can fine-tune and regulate our energy. So they're the two main components, communication and embodiment.
And would you say it's the same for marriage, like the same things that they would have to look out for?
Absolutely. This is your communication and your embodiment is your coming home to self beyond your sexual conditioning. We've all been conditioned sexually and we have conditioned responses of how we're approaching our sexual energy. And so in the really coming home to self, then we start to come into alignment and start to really resonate with who we are, not who we think we should be.
Would you say, because we live in a very busy world today, from maybe we look back at the 80s and 90s where we had a lot of magazines and of course they had TVs and stuff like that. But it seemed like, when you were at your grocery store and you're going down the aisle, there was a beauty standard. Now it's everywhere. You turn on, your phone and go to social media, there's a beauty standard or something. So now people are like, oh, I'm not a good fit. And then now they're struggling with their self. And I have found if someone is struggling with themselves and they're trying to accept themselves, but then they're comparing themselves to everyone else, they have a hard time being able to communicate to their partner, their spouse, whoever, and maybe even able to connect with them because they feel so disconnected with themselves. How can someone begin to connect with themselves in such a busy world that we're living in today?
Good question. So the first thing we need to do is to slow down. Yeah. To be able to objectively notice. Because if we don't have self-awareness of what's going on inside, then we're unable to make any changes. So, yes, I think comparing ourselves to others is part of the process of coming home to self. And, it's the adversity. It's the adversity. It's the not working. It's when things don't work that will actually make change. So most people that are coming to see me, they're coming to see me because there's a gap, there's a dysfunction, something's not working. And it takes that for us to draw our line in the sand and make that commitment to self. And that begins the journey. It's a step-by-step process. It's not going to happen in a minute. Now, little steps all together make big change. And the deconditioning from our sexual conditioning, it takes time, it takes commitment, it takes courage to really start to align with self and not abandon self and not neglect self.
I don't want to go too far into celebrity gossip and drama, but I do want to use it as an example because it's going to lead to, I believe, a good conversation. I'm not sure if you know with what happened with Will Smith and Jada or something. And basically, at some point, Will Smith, he did like a video or something. He did like a little video and put it on social media. He goes, you know what? I realized, like, especially like you're married or in a relationship, it's not so much of me having to make you happy. Like that's not my job, like to make you happy. Like you have to be happy with yourself. And I know many people who are beginning to get into a relationship. It's like, I'm so unhappy. I need a relationship so I can be happy. And then they are in that relationship and they find themselves like unhappy still. So happiness is an important aspect to a relationship. And then one of the also aspects that happens in a relationship is, being connected in that relationship. Because if you feel like you can't connect with someone, if you're not maybe sexually involved with that person, you're, like there's some out of sync thing going on. And going back to the Will Smith and Jada, what happened was there was some infidelity that happened in their relationship. And even though they had an open type of relationship, it wasn't, something that they planned from the beginning. It was something like, hey, I love you and we're together. We're going to fight the world together. And then somewhere communication breakdown, they became disconnected, two unhappy people. And of course, they are still married, but it's a very interesting view now because now people are seeing their marriage as, well, if they have this type of marriage, maybe I should have this type of marriage. And so it's almost like a copycat where it's like we learn from celebrities in a sense, and some of the things that we learn are going to be bad, and some of the things that we learn are going to be great. So, there's good role models, bad role models. And when we're trying to find the best role models now, for a good, healthy relationship, for a good sex life with your partner, like where is the best place to look for that? Because we don't get that when we're growing up.
There is, when someone's got themselves, when someone's in alignment with themselves, they are emitting a completely different frequency. Yeah, the greatest relationship we ever have is the one we're having with ourselves. And all relationships outside of ourselves are reflecting back to us the quality of the relationship we're having with ourselves. That outside relationship is showing us where to tweak and to polish and to fine-tune our relationship with ourselves. So when we start to take responsibility, this is, I'm responsible for everything that's happening in this unit here. Yeah. And it's up to me to be able to communicate my needs clearly and what I really want for myself clearly, what my limits of capacity are. And that means that we're going to have to do some deep sharing, some vulnerable sharing. And the communications break down because we're not being authentic to ourselves. We're not digging deep enough to really share what's going on at a deeper level for fear of upsetting the apple cart, or fear of conflict, or fear of loss, or fear of rejection. Yeah, so it really is about this commitment to self first and foremost. And the thing is, we don't have to go against ourselves for love, sex, and belonging when we're authentic.
Very
It's
true.
like we really come into this skin suit and really start to live from a much more aligned and authentic place.
Can you give us a little history on where the somatic practices began? Did it begin in, Egyptian time? Did it begin just recently? Or, is it something that, many people should be, going to their library or going to Google and reading up on because it's the new age way of living?
Well, now you're going back to the past. I suppose that really began in cultures of dancing. I mean, music and dance is probably one of the most primal somatic practices that we've had throughout the ages, and of course that's developed in so many different interpretations. I think in recent times, because of the level of trauma that is happening across the planet, that somatic practices have become core to really having a body connection, to getting out of here and out of the stories and be able to come to the present moment, because the body's the anchor to the now. The mind's doing past and the mind's doing future. The mind doesn't do now. It's the body that does now. So the somatic practices help us to be able to build a relationship and start to really feel our body intelligence and the sensations that our body is communicating to us. The mind's lying all the time. The body doesn't lie. And so when we follow the sensations and the intelligence of the body of what's happening in the here and now, then we're in real time. We're in moment to moment, rather than having these filters of the past and the fears of the future leading our way.
It's like Shakira. I'm not sure if you know the singer. She says her hips don't lie, or the hips don't lie. So dancing is definitely a powerful metaphor or tool to look at the empowerment. But today, many people, when it comes to beauty, it's almost artificial with makeup and clothes, and like, oh, I'm gonna wear this designer clothes like Louis Vuitton and things. And I'm not saying you can't have nice things. I'm not saying you can't put on makeup. I'm just saying that we can go to ancient tribes, civilizations, and some of the most beautiful people are going to be there. Like, I'm not sure if you ever have done any research on like just looking at like tribes in Africa or something. They wear no makeup, nothing, and they're some of the most beautiful people. And you're just like, whoa, like this beauty is there. And we just have a different type of standard for that today. So, like definitely what I've seen is like we lose a bit of history as we move with each generation. It's like we forget what happened in the past. So many people are living today in modern relationships where, they're, focused on today, like not so much of traditional things that have happened in the past. And it's causing quite a bit of discrepancies with many relationships and creating that harmony within them, because many people are giving themselves this aspect now. Why bother breaking something or fixing something when it's broken? For example, if I break a plate, I'm going to go to the grocery store, go to Target, somewhere, and I'm going to get another plate because it's easier for me to get something that is already nice and fresh and nice and new than to fix what is broken, because it's going to take a very long time. It's not going to be the same. It's going to look like it's cracked and things like that. So many people will abandon things in hopes for something better. So they give themselves this fantasy. It could be even like a sexual fantasy. So maybe your partner currently, maybe they're not doing things that please you. So down the road, you're like, well, you know what? You're watching a lot of movies with maybe Latin culture, and Latin culture is big on, romance and dancing and, emotions. And maybe that can be invigorating for you. So you're like, I want, this type of relationship. So you're basically saying this is no good, but this is what I want. And when you give yourself that mindset, is it something that you can save yourself from? Is it something that you can instill in your partner and say, this is what I'm looking for. You need to do it. And I know I say that in the sense of like, it's so abrasive, right? You need to do this because if not, I'm not going to be happy. Or is it something that, like this is a fantasy of mine, and though I would like to live it, it's not something that is necessarily going to make or break the relationship, if you kind of get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing here that is relationship is a skill, and it's something that we're not taught. There are many components to building a healthy relationship that we are learning around communication, around conflict resolution, how to do that in a conscious way so that we're actually repairing, so that we're on the same team, that we're not in opposition to each other. Relationship is a skill, and it takes time to learn those skills. The next thing there that you were saying, can you concise your question to me again, please?
Well, there was necessarily no question, but more so of how we can see something that we are looking at. So, for example, the example I gave was you have a partner that's not doing exactly what you're looking for. For example, but you're not a dancer, you're not romantic, you're not buying me flowers, etc.
So we've got to remember that we're here to meet each other, not where we think we should be, not where we wish or hope to be. We're here to meet each other where we're at. And when we can start meeting each other then we can start finding that mutual place where nobody is overriding the other. Because that's what conventional sex is, right? It's unhealthy domination and unhealthy submission. Yeah, where we're feeling that one person's desire is more important than the other, instead of realizing that both people need to be in their power. Both people need to be honoring each other. And then from that place, we're finding out, where can we meet? So if one person's got a desire, if that desire's limits or capacity surpasses the other, then we're going to overstimulate. We're going to override somebody else's boundaries and limits. And that's always going to create resentment. So we're having conscious sex conversations with each other to communicate and make an agreement of the limits in which we're going to participate in experience with each other. When we do that, both people can be in their power. Power is something we play out in our sexual experiences all the time. Great, it's awesome. But we both need to be in our power to do that. Otherwise, we're buying back into the unhealthy domination and unhealthy submission, where we can have healthy domination and healthy submission. We can consciously play with power together.
Would you say in that light, there is some level of sexual obligation that, is going to be pertinent in relationships?
Obligation comes from this place of entitlement. It's up to each individual to attend to their own sexual needs. Nobody else is responsible for attending to your sexual needs. That's your job. Yeah. You're learning how to move your energy in ways that move your energy through. and nobody else is responsible for that. So while you're placing that responsibility or that entitlement on another, you're always going to create a discrepancy. There is a self-responsibility and a coming home to self in that full ownership of sexual self-responsibility.
I definitely agree with that. But then there's the logical aspect to the brain that's going to now step in where, well, if I'm in charge of my own sexual being and myself, why not step out of my relationship?
Yeah, you can do that. It depends what you're wanting for yourself. Do you want to create separation or do you want to create connection? Yeah, like the person you're with is the exact person who is giving you the developmental pieces that you need for yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. The one you're with is the one. Yeah, and it's about you're learning how to meet each other. You're learning how to come onto the same team. You're learning how to look outwards in the same direction. This is the nature of relationship. We can focus on what we don't have all the time, or we can really focus on what we do have and practice conscious relating skills, really learning how to connect. Again, that starts with the union within. The outer relationship is reflecting what's going on inside. So this separation of what's going on inside is going to manifest in the outer relationship until such a time that you make the inner changes. And as you make the inner changes, then the outer starts to change.
How would you know that someone is meant to be on your team? For example, we can look at values. We can say that they're a family person. They want to have kids. They want to travel the world. And so you can, have values there. But I think there is a deeper meaning to what you were saying when it comes to like, are they on your team? Like, do they want to be connected with you? Because we can look at many examples. For example, divorce, like they don't want to be connected with you anymore, right? They're breaking the communication. They're breaking the bond. They're breaking the vow, if you get married, like with a church or something, right? Like they're maybe focused on self, maybe they have exhausted everything, right? They have tried and it didn't work. And they say, okay, well, like this is no longer healthy for me or for us. And we make some changes, right? So I think it's important to let people understand or to know, how would someone know that, this person is for me? Like this person is meant to be on my team.
When someone's on our team, they're showing up. They're demonstrating their depth of care. They want to have the conversations. They want to communicate. They're coming from, I win, you win. They're coming from reconciliation and repair. They're coming from self-accountability and ownership. They're demonstrating their willingness to be there. And that's what it takes. It takes the willingness to go, okay, I'm here. I'm in this relationship. I'm going to bring all of myself here.
What about one-sided love? I'm not sure if you ever experienced this. I know it's very different than relationships, but one-sided love is maybe one person saying, I'll do anything to make this relationship work. Like I'm going to do what needs to be done, et cetera, et cetera. But then there's one person that just doesn't want to reciprocate the love. And whether it be at the inception of a relationship where you are meeting and you're trying to make things work, or it be something that happened in the middle, because maybe there was some uncertainties that happened at the beginning or in the middle of the relationships that kind of gave you this feeling of, I'm not sure, but I'm still going to test it out. I'm going to see if it is for me, and I'm going to see if it works. And then maybe down the road, you're like, no, it's not for me anymore. So, let me fall away from what we were creating together. So now you have that one person who didn't necessarily truly know what they wanted because they were kind of wishy-washy. But then you had that one person that was so devoted, so in love, wanted to create the skills and enhance their skills and communications and everything. And it just seemed like it wasn't, like that match made in heaven type of deal.
Sure. And I think when we don't have relationship skills, that tends to play out. when we get a solid sense of self, and this coming home to self, we are less and less willing to, as I said, go against ourselves. And so, as children, we are dependent. We're dependent on our parents providing all of our needs for us. But the signpost of moving from a child to an adult is self-responsibility. And so in having this responsibility to self, you're moving out of codependency. You're moving into interdependency, where you're responsible for your own needs, responsible for setting your limits of capacity with somebody. And so you're learning about overgiving and undergiving. Yeah, we overgive when we're trying to seek our validation from an outside source. We overgive when we're trying to get love from the other. Yeah. We undergive when we're not fully committed to the relationship. We're not fully showing up. So, that you started speaking, and that was you were talking about pleasing, one person pleasing, showing up with all the pieces. But if the other person isn't available, then they're clearly showing you that they're not in. Yeah. And so it's up to you to decide. Yeah, like, am I going to continue with somebody who's not actually here and committed to the relationship? Or, there's many conversations to be had in that one to come into. You've got two beings with individual needs, individual wants, individual desires, individual limits of capacity. How do we keep our individualism, and then how do we create a healthy relationship so that nobody's needs are more important than the others?
What is love? And is love necessary to have a lasting relationship?
Love is a practice. Yeah, love is a practice. Love is something that is demonstrated ongoingly. Yeah, it's not chemistry. We often think that sexual energy, the hormones, the heart, all of that, that's a really slippery slope to hang the hopes or the validity of a relationship on. Yeah. Love is a demonstration. It's an action that we ongoingly demonstrate.
When I was listening to, I was like, love is a practice. It's so critical too, because we think love is so much more than the practice. Like we think of a sports player, for example, before they get into the game, they have practice. It could be anything, like a speech. You practice before the real speech. And with practice, you get better, right? And I was thinking, like, all from our conversation today, many people, when they begin relationships and love and becoming intimate with one another, they don't necessarily know much. We can even go from when you're beginning in your teen years and you're like, okay, let me learn this. And love is so new and it's so fresh. You get the butterflies and everything. And then high school goes and comes, and now you're in college, maybe starting work. And now you have a more mature type of mindset. Now relationships mean something different to you. And now you're making your way, and now you're in your 30s. Now relationship means something different. And it's almost like our values are constantly fluctuating. And we have a choice if we begin to have those high school sweethearts that we carry on with us in each of those maturing and growing stages that we're going in. Because if we look at the statistics for how many people stay with their high school sweetheart, is actually quite low. When the love seems so real back then, right? You felt everything. It felt so right. And then it's almost like instead of growing together, we grew apart. Is that the human nature to learn and experience and to practice with different people and different feelings and emotions, and one day finally settling down into something that says, okay, I've had the practice, I've tried to do different things, I've seen that this worked, this doesn't work. Is it necessary, or can someone just kind of go in with maybe this innate feeling of what they should be feeling in a relationship and know from the get-go, so there's not so much of a learning process or a learning curve where they have to say, well, I failed this relationship, I'm failing the next one too, because this is helping me become my stepping stones to get to the perfect relationship.
The question is?
Well, the question is basically, we have a growing process as we are evolving. We have a high school kid learning love. Love felt so real to us. We might think that love is what we should have when we're 50. And we can give ourselves a perception of, well, my grandma and grandpa have this type of love. So we associate our love, our current love, with that type of love. And then we realize that love wasn't exactly what we wanted. So now we keep on changing as we evolve, and eventually we mature. We want to settle down and have a family. And then now our love definition is very different than what it was when we were a teen.
Yeah, I don't think it ever stops. I think that we're given a lifetime for a reason, because it takes a lifetime. We have a lot of developmental stages that happen. And yes, each relationship we're learning new skills, because we're not taught relationship skills and sexuality skills in high school. Life would be very different if we were taught these core relational skills in high school. We would approach our relationships very, very differently. So at the moment, we bumble along, we get hurt, we learn the hard way. And yeah, it's with each relationship, usually there's a lot of chemistry going on. And that chemistry is hormones. And those hormones have a shelf life. Yeah. And the honeymoon stage is going to finish at some point. And then we're going to see what we're really here to learn with each other. Yeah. Can we create that connection ongoingly beyond the hormone?
And that is the work that you do, right? You help people with that ongoing process, because we are experiencing, we are learning. And as you said, we don't have a high school class where we're learning about love and we're learning about relationships and marriage and what it entails. I mean, heck, we don't even teach kids about finances. So love is definitely a back burner topic, and something that many people are shying away from, especially today, because like it's something where people have learned to be so independent, where they feel like they don't need to be interdependent with anyone, where they don't want to create that mesh with someone else, because they say, well, I can do it myself. I can pay my own bills. I can please myself. I can, travel the world by myself. And, it's great in the beginning, I think. But then we look at one of the greatest regrets that elderly people have. One of the regrets is to do the things that they didn't do. So it could be starting a family, it could be having kids, it could be staying connected with their friends and family, things along those lines, right? And there's like 100 different regrets or something, like like that. Like they have books on this, and I read them too, because it was so interesting. Because you have so much dynamic when it comes to that, because you have your individuals who are in their 40s and 50s realizing like, hey, like I want some type of connection. And then you have the people who are maybe in their 80s getting close to death, and they have their loved one, and they have this connection that cannot be broken, it seemed like. And I just talked about the story recently, but I'm definitely going to share it with you. It was a man and a woman. They were probably in their 80s and 90s, like they're at the end of their life. And the wife, she was ill. And so one day she wasn't doing too well. So the husband saw her not doing well. She was laying on the sofa. And the husband said, honey, I'm going to call the doctor so the doctor can come over and check on you to make sure you're okay. And the wife said, no, I just want to lay here and I just want to go to sleep, meaning, she wanted to pass on. So what they did was, and the daughter is telling the story because the daughter was there, like seeing this happen. So the husband was on the ground and they're holding hands and they're talking and they were just talking about all the good things they had in their life. And eventually she fell asleep and, she passed away. But that love and connection that they had was not something that they created in one day, in 1 week, in 1 month, in 1 year. It took a lifetime where they made it to the end, where they can appreciate what they had. And there's many people who are not willing to step into that type of ending because they're so worried about the hurt that they can have in between. They don't necessarily understand that a relationship is going to have ups and downs, and there's going to be good and bad moments in a relationship where that hurt can be enough to say, you know what, I'm done with this. And many people do toss away their relationships, their marriages, whatever it be, and they don't make it to the end game. So is there a secret to get to that end game for an individual who is looking for that type of harmony in their life?
Breaking down to break through. When a heart breaks open, we are breaking through to the next layer. We're learning that being in relationship, our ego is going to die over and over again. And most people have been so hurt that they've put a big armor around their heart. They put in walls rather than bring in limits. Yeah, limits of engagement with each other and honoring the pace. Yeah, each person has a pace at which they're comfortable in opening. And that's what we're listening for. We're listening to each other and honoring each other's capacity. Yeah, we want to melt the armor that's around the heart. We want to find sanctuary with somebody. We want to find that safe place where I'm free here to be me. I can reveal the deeper aspects of who I am here. And that's something that's built over time because we're building trust with each other. And every time a trust marker is met, it's like, oh, there we go. I can increase my engagement next time because we hit that trust marker. We're building relationship. Relationship doesn't arrive ready-made.
Don't feel like you're stuck. Feel like you're connected. And if you need some help, reach out to Eve. She's going to be a wonderful resource for you. And I do want to thank you, Eve, for coming on, spending some time talking about your work and just giving us so much lovely insight on, the sexual empowerment that you're working with and how you help people get into healthier and happier relationships.